Welcome back to Stationeers, and it's time to take a look at some options when your base grows a little bit. The more your base grows, the more light you're going to get, and of course the more power it's going to use, whether it's the automated furnace setup, and I currently, better turn my light on. I've got a portable light upstairs, don't worry, we'll come back to that in a second. Whether we've got this ridiculous flashing furnace setup or any other setup really, it's going to use coal, and the chips are going to be on pretty much permanently, so it is going to be using power at idle, and so are these wall lights even when you're out mining. So I got a request from Pompage again on one of the commenters asking about, well, could we sort of shut these down if a player isn't around, along with a delay. So I think we're going to do a delay timer today. So the idea of this is when I'm around, whether I push a button or whether I have a motion sensor detecting me or something, everything's going to be on because I'm going to be around to use it. But when I'm not around, when I don't push this button, sort of like the button in Lost, after a few minutes, everything's going to shut down, or in Lost in the case, I guess, everything explodes. But in this game, we want everything to shut down. And of course, when you come back and push the button again, everything comes back up, or indeed responds to a motion sensor. So let me just turn my lights off. First thing we need for anything like that is some kind of timer. And we haven't really covered timers. I created a clock, but that was only really dependent upon the daylight angle, the solar angle. And we've used a clock circuit briefly in the very first sort of brute force version of that automated furnace setup. But we're going to need something more regular, and you're probably going to need one of these for your entire base, to be honest. Once you have it running, it's only going to need 2 chips that are actually going to take up power. I got some good suggestions of the people that saw my last clock circuit, which was flipping between -1 and 1, that we can actually do a better than that. So here it is. Here's the compacted one, because -1 and 1, I think I then divided by 2 and then rounded up, and that creates 0 and 1. But yeah, we can do better. All we need to do is just set your initial memory, and this is only needs to be connected to this compare unit as 0.5. And then in the compare unit, just say logic memory, i.e. this, 0.5, is it greater than ticker, which is your actual clock? And you set that at 0 to start off with, or 1, doesn't really matter. So this is going to compare and then output the opposite, which is then going to be taken by this logic writer and pushed back into this memory, and around it goes. And that's updating every 500 milliseconds. So essentially, whenever it turns into 1, it should be 1 second, I think. As long as the server tick rate doesn't change, then we're going to have some other issues. But that's okay. So we've now got a way to connect a ticking 1 second clock. Now, if you didn't like the 24-hour clock, if you preferred a minute, an actual minutes clock, then you could easily use a source like that to output seconds and have it counting up, or in our case, in some cases, counting down. All right. So hopefully that's relatively straightforward. Let's move on. The next thing we're going to need to look at is, well, not these logic Boolean logic switches, but we're going to need some way of having a timer. Because we can certainly grab, do I have any sensors spare? I'm just wondering how much, let's just see. Do I have a motion sensor in here? What do I have? 17 gold. Okay, so let's see if we get a kit sensors, shall we? Should be in here somewhere. Oop, there it is. Can I build it? Yeah, it's quite cheap. Plenty of iron, just not enough gold. There we go. All right. So, yeah, what can we build with this? Well, we can build a daylight sensor, of course, a gas sensor, or the one thing we haven't used so far, which is a motion sensor. So, you know, I can happily put that here. And let's just grab this for a second. Oh, not that. This. And then we're going to need to just change over. There we go. And we can attach it with a junction. I suppose we use a 4-way junction. It's not actually any more expensive than a regular junction. Still, the rotation in this game is just odd. But we have a motion sensor, and we can actually read that with something else. It doesn't seem to have any kind of hover tooltip. It would be nice if that just outputs a 1 or a 0, but if it doesn't, we can just use a reader to actually read from it to actually get the value. No harm there. So if we just implemented this, we can just have a writer either looking at this or the corresponding reader for it, and then just outputting a 1 whenever it had. See, there you go. You see, it's green whenever it sees me, but otherwise, it's grey. Okay, so we don't need the tooltip after all. So I could put this above my airlock into my base. So every time I walked into my base through the airlock, we could get a 1 with the user logic writer. And we could write 1 out to something, or even just leave the writer, and then use that to decide whether the so we have a batch writer to all the lights, saying should the lights be on and off. The only problem is, as soon as I step away from the airlock near that airlock door, yeah, all the lights will go off. So we're going to need something to keep them on for a while, and you're going to want to be able to configure what a while is for your base. So maybe a few minutes, maybe 30 seconds, depends how long you think you spend in your base. Okay, so for the next piece of this, we're going to need the actual countdown timer itself. So we need a couple of memory units. One is whatever we're going to set the timer to start with, so whatever delay you want. And then the timer itself. At the moment, that's just sitting idle. And we're going to connect to it a logic writer, and that's going to be pointed at the timer and its setting, and then it's going to need an input something. So we're constantly going to be writing to this. To decide what we're going to write to it, we're going to take a math unit. We're going to take that ticker that's flipping between these, and we're going to subtract that from something else. So we're going to subtract it probably from this value, to be honest. So its input needs to be connected to that via some cable. So let's just quickly do that. And in fact, we're going to need to connect both of these. So let's put in some, again, ubiquitous four-way junctions. We're also going to need something here for power. So unfortunately, we're going to have to connect up even more cable. I'm going to be running out of cable pretty soon now. So let's just say we need power at the top on this one. So I guess we could save more cable later, but I'm just going to put these in for now and run out of cable. Let's see if I've got enough copper. I think I've got enough copper to make more. Let's just pop you over to cable. It's almost probably worthwhile making one of these electroprint machines just for cable. And just leave it on that setting, just because it's so common a requirement to make it. Then it's just worthwhile, I think. So I may well do that, but not just yet. Let's just grab, say, 12. Maybe that'll be enough. One more. Okay. So we need to hook this power up and not to corners. We want four-way junctions again. One of these days I will rotate them correctly. Okay, so now we can turn on our math unit, I guess, but first of all, yeah, the writer's going to be fine. So we're going to read from timer. Well, do I need a logic reader, or no, I can just read timer. So timer, subtract, whatever that says. So it's going to be doing nothing half the time and then subtracting 1 the other half the time, which is exactly what we want. So now, is there no power to it? I'm not connected to the power. Yes, that would help. Let's just remove you for a second, and let's just grab, where did I put the rest? There we go. That light on the floor is interfering with things. All right, now you got power. So, yeah. What are we getting? It's not writing anything back to it. So, yeah, without the writer on, it's just going to be flickering between 0 and -1 because this isn't being updated by anything. Okay, so if we turn on the writer, the input's going to be the math unit. And logic math. Hopefully that's the only maths unit I've got on here. Yeah. And the output is going to be the timer setting. So let's turn you on. And now you can see it's counting down from 0. So we've got a countdown timer working just fine, except that instead of, counting down from 0, we're going to want to, reset that to a known value. And then we're going to want to test it to see if it's above 0. And as soon as it's below 0, or at 0, that's when we want to actually do some other stuff to it. So let's first of all put those pieces in. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to need to do is I'll just replace this logic switch that we have here. I don't even need this light anymore, but just replace this with a button. Okay, so we can push the button. It's a momentary switch rather than a lock switch. So to build that, you just build a normal logic switch. You just scroll wheel through the options. You get logic dial and you get a logic button. So we're using the button. So we're going to be looking at a select unit. And the select unit, we're going to want to point at this button. So I've called it reset button. And hopefully it's in here somewhere. Hopefully it is actually connected. Yes, it is. And then we're going to choose. So 0, I'm going to choose the current timer value. All right. And 1, I'm going to choose the max timer. So right now, let's turn it on. It's at this unit. So when it goes to 1, this is going to be hard to see because it's going to reset itself really quickly at the moment because I don't have the next piece available. It's set to -13 because this isn't on. So let's just turn that back on. So now you should see that it's nicely going down. And if I hit this, temporarily you'll see it got set to 10, but then back because this is a momentary button. But we're also going to respond to that by taking a look at this. And we're going to then write back out to this timer. So we're going to need a writer for that. Let's just see. Yeah, logic writer will do. And where do I want to actually put this? I guess I could. Can I save much? Yeah, that would save at least a tiny bit of cable. Let's just put you in. Okay, so now on the logic writer, I want to choose the output to be the timer. Yeah, and it's setting. And the input we're going to read from this select unit. So let's just rename that, shall we? So let's say this is the reset select. All right, so reset select should be in here. Hopefully. There we go. So reset select right to the timer, the setting, and we can turn you on. So the moment it's writing whatever the current value of that timer is, and it's obviously decreasing because of this math unit. So now if I push this button, however, what we should see is it now has reset the timer to 10, and then it's going to continue counting back down. So we've got the entire counter set up to reset to a known value, which is 10, which is exactly what we want for a countdown timer. We then need to do something with that result. So again, we're going to need some kind of comparison in this case, and we're going to be comparing it to a known value again. So we're probably going to need another bit of memory, aren't we, first? And do I have any memory? Am I out? Probably. It'd be nice if there was, I suppose you could leave some logic memory connected to your entire base, but in this case, whoops, let's turn on the light. We're just going to need one more piece of memory. We're going to need to compare it to something, so we're going to need the memory for that. So I'm getting away from my cable coil, annoyingly. Let's just grab a piece of memory. There we go, logic memory. Shouldn't take very long. And we're going to need to store a value of 0, or it doesn't really matter. You could do 1. Yeah, 1 actually might be a useful one, so to speak. That was terrible. Yeah, so let's pop it in here, and let's say you can be relabeled to 1 or 0. I think we can test both, and I'm just going to set you to 1 while I think about it. That's 10. No, I want the small numbers. Increase 1. Okay, so we're then going to grab the processor and create the compare. And is it 4-way? Is it 3-way connection? 4-way connection. That's fine. Okay, and I'm just going to call this trigger for now. Timer trigger, something like that. Doesn't really matter too much. Just so you can differentiate it. And then we're going to test whether our timer, which we should be able to connect to this via lots and lots of 4-way junctions. Because why not? Okay, whether our timer should be in here is less than 1. Okay, so it's currently less than 1. In fact, we want greater than 0. Yeah, we want greater than 0. You won't get this wrong. And what we're going to do is use the output of this to decide whether our equipment should be on or off. So at the moment, the way it's set up is that it'll be it'll be on whenever you leave the base and off whenever you do otherwise. So let's actually just change that over. Let's just rename you back to 0. Yeah, and we could do less than 1, but it won't quite line up with the what we want for this. So let's just do it this way around. So greater than 0. All right, so it's not currently greater than 0, which means everything should be off in our base at the moment. But if we push the reset switch, everything should be on, and it's going to stay on until it hits this test. So as soon as it actually hits 0, it should pop to off. There it goes. And of course, then we can then read it. So if we use the timer trigger, this is the motion sensor trigger at the moment. So you'll see I've got it set to motion sensor activate. There is also another setting called quantity, but at the moment the quantity is either 0 or 1 because I'm on a single player. I assume that may well show 2 if you're on a multiplayer or greater, but again, I only need activate. As you can see, that's just flipping between 0 and 1. So this would be, if you like, the equivalent to this button. So either one of these we can take as the source to use to essentially reset that timer. Whichever one you like. But in order to turn then the stuff into our base, we then need to take the compare unit and decide what to do with it. So in this case, let's do something really simple and just grab an I/O unit. A logic writer will do us. I can just flip this, I think, to get a little bit less cable used. Okay, and what have I called this? The output LED. So let's go and get the output, that one, output LED. Should be in here. There we go, output LED and the on setting, I think. Yeah, the on setting. And we're going to take it from this compare unit. So timer trigger is what we want on this side. There we go, turn it on, and you'll see it's off at the moment. So I come back to my base, I push a button, and everything should come on. Yep, there it is. And 10 seconds later, at the moment, because this max timer is set to 10, everything will go back off again, which it has. Okay, so if you want to do the same thing, but instead just have it triggered by a motion sensor, we can just look at this motion sensor thing and decide, hang on, do we need it in the writer? No, we need it in the compare unit, don't we? So, or even earlier. Where am I looking? Reset button, there we go. We need that to be the motion sensor. So if I come over here, it should trigger, which should reset the timer, which should start the lights. And if I step over here for a second, the timer's going to start counting down. And when it runs out, obviously it's going to deactivate the lights. There we go. So you've now got a way to basically activate a lot of stuff in your base, but only while you're there or only when you push a button. And that's quite important perhaps for that furnace setup further down. What we could do is hook this, instead of hooking this up to the lights using this there's this writer, we could hook this up to a transformer or an APC. There's something, does that the APC have an on state? The transformer certainly does, which is over here. Yeah, so we can hook up to this and then turn it on and off depending whether you're around to use the equipment. So I thought that'd be a pretty good use of our logic circuits, sort of an extension of the last one. I know we haven't used any ANDs or OR gates here, but it's using switches, it's responding to stuff and keeping a timer going. Now, I guess the other thing you could look at is a count up timer, and that's again for maybe the clock approach that we had over there. All you probably do with that is you change this math unit to be, because it's flipping between 0 and 1, you change this to add instead of subtract. And now you'd set your, you'd probably be able to remove this max timer entirely. So instead of then writing, using this select to go between the timer and max timer, you go between timer and 0. Right here. So I guess we can sort that out. So let's just change that over. Let's change it over to 0, shall we? Okay, and let's change that to add. And now the timer should be counting up. It is. And now let's just make sure. Yep, so it's counting up. and of course, which has activated the light. But if we hit the reset button, in fact, it's not looking at the reset button anymore, is it? It's looking at the motion sensor. Let's just change back to the reset button just so I can do this without just running around in front of the motion sensor. Reset button, are you in here somewhere? There you are. Okay, so, it should reset to 0 and then come back on again because we've got this responding to things that are greater than 0. So if you wanted a count up timer, all you then need to do is just create an LED. Do I have any spare? I think I had some. Did I put one in here? Consoles? Yeah. So we could put in this. Apparently the issue where the numbers were offset has been fixed now. Shall we try it? Maybe. Let's just flip this over and turn it on. Okay, so it is actually nice and central now. And now I guess we can just rewrite to this. So let's take we don't want the timer trigger anymore. We actually want this select unit, don't we? So we can then choose, where's my screwdriver? Did I swap it into the... Yeah, swapped it into the locker. Okay, so timer trigger, we don't want timer trigger. We want the logic, what was it called? Reset select. Reset select, and then we want to choose the output, the LED display large, and choose its setting. So there we go. We've got basically a count up timer or a stopwatch, whatever you want to call it. You hit the activate button, it's going to reset, and then it's going to start counting again. Hopefully that's clear. Again, same circuit, just rearranging just essentially what the select unit is selecting on if you want the input to change. And then if you want the sort of mode to change. Power low because I've got my light on all the time. 1 second. Let's just grab you, flip you over. Yeah, there's the power can go back. So yeah, if you want to select the mode, then you're just changing the math unit to do add or subtract if you want to count up or down, and then finally whatever you want to reset it to is in the set unit. So if it's 0, i.e. normally it should always be the timer. If you push 1 into this, its output will change to whatever you put here. So in this case it's going to reset to 0, but of course you can add another logic memory and reset it to whatever you like depending on what you want. Okay, so that's a complete build. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. I know there's been a fair amount of electronics again. I've done another electronics episode. But it is pretty good to have this sort of thing, and it will help you save power, which is one of the more important things in Stationeers. So, when you're away from your base, don't have it consuming power. Just do something like this. You can even go, well, I guess this is going to consume power by itself. So we've got 4, 5, 6... 7, 8, but you're probably going to want a clock in your base anyway, so let's not count those. So let's say 6, and then this maybe this reader if you want a motion sensor. You don't need a reader for the reset button, of course. So yeah, 6, which is probably I guess we can look at this actually. Where's my? Because it's all on the inside of an APC. Let me just grab this handheld tablet. I think it's got the atmospheric analyzer at the moment. We don't want that in. Let's just grab network analyzer. Yeah, we can flip those over. And can I turn you on? I can. Good. And I'm just going to put you back. We could have, of course, put an analyzer on the network, but that would consume some power. So it's using 235 watts at the moment, but I guess, this is on, so let's just turn you off, and let's turn you off as well. And that should be everything. So 215 watts. So that's roughly one solar panel, because solar panel produces like 500 watts during the day, nothing at night. So essentially one solar panel will have you a system that you can then use to shut off everything else that you want to in the base when you're not there. And to be honest, you probably want this this max timer set to something better than 10 if you're going to use the countdown. So maybe, I don't know, 60 if you want 60 seconds, or 180, something along those lines. The day length I think is 20 minutes, so don't be too worried about it. Or you can flip it around. You could flip the logic around to say, when I push the button, deactivate everything, and then reactivate when a motion sensor's hit. So maybe you've got your motion sensor on the inside of your airlock door. So you can flip the switch on your way out, everything will go off, and when you come back, except for the airlock, you're going to want to keep powering the airlock, otherwise you can't get to the motion sensor. Aside from that little niggle, everything should just work fine. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to share, like, subscribe, etc, etc, etc. And I'm probably going to be getting to the end of the Stationeers content, so if you've got any suggestions for other games, I can obviously look at Space Engineers, and I can obviously return to my previous series about Factorio and other stuff like that. I like all that intricate stuff, but obviously there's been quite a few new subscribers coming in for Stationeers, and I just want to see what your opinions are, as opposed to the previous subscribers as well. So do leave comments below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.